The night was colder than usual on the open plains of Arizona, and the moon hung low like a silver blade. Cowboys called this kind of night, wolf weather, when the pack came down from the mesas hungry enough to take anything that moved. Jacob Reed knew it well. He'd been on the trail 3 days, driving cattle across land the locals said was cursed, Apache ground, sacred and untamed. But he didn't believe in curses. He believed in grit, in gunpowder, and in the long shadow of his own luck. That is, until he heard the scream. It wasn't the cry of an animal, but a human, sharp, desperate, echoing across the desert wind. Jacob's horse reared, snorting, as the sound came again, closer this time. He turned toward the hills, heart pounding, his instincts taking over before his thoughts could catch up. When he reached the canyon ridge, the moonlight revealed chaos, 3 wolves circling a fallen figure, snapping and snarling. Without thinking, Jacob drew his rifle and fired. One fell, the others turned, eyes flashing like coals, but he didn't stop. 2 more shots cracked through the silence, echoing off the rocks until only the wind remained. Then came stillness. The girl lay half-conscious in the dust, her long black hair tangled with blood and sand, a torn leather tunic clinging to her trembling frame. She couldn't have been more than 20, yet her eyes, when they fluttered open, were fierce, ancient somehow. Jacob slid from his horse and knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he said softly, reaching to check her wounds. She winced, whispering something in Apache. He couldn't understand, but the tone was clear: pride, resistance, suspicion. Still, she didn't push him away. Her skin was cold, her pulse faint. He wrapped her in his blanket, lifted her gently onto his horse, and rode toward the distant light of his campfire. The whole ride back, he could feel her eyes on him, half grateful, half hateful, like she was weighing whether to trust him or strike him when her strength returned. By the time dawn broke, the fire burned low and the wolves were gone. Jacob sat sharpening his knife, watching her stir awake. She looked around, confusion flashing to fury. "Why did you bring me here?" she demanded. Her English was broken but clear. "You were dying," Jacob said simply. "I don't leave people for the wolves." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze steady, unreadable. Then she said something that made him freeze. "You saved me," she whispered, her tone shifting. "You're mine now." Jacob frowned, unsure if he'd heard right. "Yours," he repeated. The girl nodded, her dark eyes glinting in the firelight. "In our law," she said slowly, choosing her words, "when a man saves a woman's life, his life belongs to her. Forever." She said it not as a request, but a decree, ancient and absolute. Jacob chuckled, thinking she must be delirious. "Well, ma'am, I reckon that's one law I don't follow." He stood, dusting off his hat, but she only stared, unblinking. "You will," she said. "You already do." There was something unsettling in her calm. As the sun climbed higher, Jacob tended to his horse and packed his gear. The girl, who called herself Nita, refused to rest, insisting she could walk. But when she tried to stand, pain shot through her leg and she collapsed. Without a word, Jacob caught her, his hands steady, his eyes avoiding hers. "Easy now," he murmured. "You're still hurt." For a heartbeat, their faces were inches apart, her breath warm against his skin, her eyes searching his with strange intensity. "You don't understand," she said softly. "When I said you're mine, the spirits heard it. They'll bind it." That night, as the desert cooled and the stars returned, Nita sat by the fire, whispering prayers into the smoke. Jacob listened from the edge of camp, trying to make sense of her words. Every time she spoke his name, the flames seemed to flicker brighter, casting long, shifting shadows that danced around her. Finally, she turned to him. "The wolves weren't hunting me," she said. "They were sent." Jacob's brow furrowed. "Sent? By who?" She looked out toward the dark horizon. "By the man who killed my father. He wants me gone before I can claim my place." Jacob felt a chill crawl up his spine. The way she said it, steady, certain, made him believe. He wanted to tell her she was safe now, that he'd take her to town come morning, but something in the air told him leaving wasn't an option. The desert seemed alive, whispering, waiting. Then she looked at him again, eyes glowing faintly gold in the firelight. "You don't see it yet," she said. "But the land chose you too." Her words made his chest tighten. He didn't believe in destiny. Yet as the wind howled through the canyon, he felt something, a pull, invisible but real, binding him to her, to this place, to something far older than either of them. The next morning, Jacob awoke to find Nita gone. Her footprints led toward the cliffs beyond camp, light and swift despite her injury. He cursed under his breath and followed, rifle slung over his shoulder. The path wound upward through stone arches and whispering junipers until it opened onto a wide plateau. There, standing at the edge of the world, was Nita, arms raised to the sky, chanting in a language that made the air vibrate. "Nita," he called, but she didn't turn. The wind whipped her hair like black fire, her voice rising until the earth itself seemed to answer. Then came the sound, distant at first, then closer. Hooves. Men. Jacob dropped behind a rock just as a group of armed riders appeared from the canyon, 6 men in rough coats and white hats, their faces cruel and familiar. One of them spat, scanning the ridge. "Find her. Chief's brat can't have gone far." Jacob's blood boiled. These were bounty men, hired killers, the kind who'd slaughtered her people. He lifted his rifle, aimed, and fired. Chaos erupted, bullets flew, horses screamed, the men scattered, but Jacob didn't stop until the last one hit the dirt. When the smoke cleared, he turned, and found Nita standing behind him, calm, silent, eyes filled with something fierce and unearthly. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "They would have found you too," Jacob replied. "Guess that makes us even." But Nita shook her head. "No, now it's sealed." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his chest where the bullets had grazed his vest. "The blood, the fight, the saving, it's the old way," she whispered. "The bond can't break now." Before he could speak, she placed her palm over his heart, and warmth surged through him, deep and wild. The air shimmered around them, and for a moment, Jacob saw visions, wolves circling fire, a spirit woman rising from smoke, her face the same as Nita's. When it ended, the world was still again. Nita lowered her hand, her expression unreadable. "You're mine now," she said softly, almost tenderly. "And I am yours, not by choice, by the will of the land." Jacob looked at her, unsure whether to be afraid or grateful. Somewhere deep inside, he knew life would never be the same. From that day on, those who rode through the canyon spoke of a strange pair, a cowboy and an Apache girl who walked the borderlands like ghosts, protecting the wild places where no man dared to tread. And sometimes, on cold desert nights when the wolves began to howl, travelers swore they heard a woman's voice whispering through the wind, "He saved me once. Now, he'll never walk alone." Jacob awoke to the smell of sage and smoke. The desert sun was climbing, painting the rocks gold and crimson, and the fire Nita had built crackled low, its ashes dancing in the wind. She was sitting cross-legged beside it, her dark hair falling over her shoulders as she crushed herbs with smooth stones. Her movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, and the quiet strength in her hands drew his eyes. "You should rest," he said, still groggy. Without looking up, she answered, "Rest wastes daylight. Wolves hunt again when the sun bleeds." Her tone was calm, steady, not that of a frightened girl, but a woman used to surviving alone. Jacob leaned back against a rock, studying her. "You really believe those wolves were sent?" he asked. She paused for a moment before nodding slowly. "He sends everything that hunts me. The traitor with silver teeth, the man who took my father's rifle, they all follow the same shadow." Jacob frowned, trying to make sense of her words. "Who's he asked. She looked at him then, her eyes dark and deep like storm clouds rolling across the desert. "The one who betrayed our tribe. White name, Clinton Hayes." The name hit Jacob like a hammer. He knew it, an outlaw who'd run guns through every reservation from here to New Mexico. Hayes was ruthless, the kind of man who'd sell bullets to both sides of a fight. "I've crossed paths with that devil," Jacob muttered, jaw tightening. "Didn't think he'd stoop to hunting girls." Nita's gaze hardened. "Not just a girl. The last bloodline of my father, Chief Dakota. If I live, the land remembers him. If I die, it forgets." She said it with such conviction that Jacob felt a chill under the hot desert sun. The silence stretched, heavy and thick. Jacob finally broke it with a sigh. "You've got a right to live, Nita. And Hayes, he'll pay for what he's done. But don't say things like I'm yours. I ain't a spirit, and I sure don't belong to nobody." She rose slowly, dust swirling around her bare feet. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "When you saved me, the land took your name. The desert keeps its debts." Her words sent an uneasy tremor through him. Jacob wanted to laugh it off, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was at work. The air itself seemed to hum around her, like the sky held its breath whenever she spoke. Later that afternoon, she limped down to the stream while he followed, helping her over the rocks. The way she moved reminded him of a wild creature, wounded but proud, trusting him only because the earth itself had forced her to. She crouched by the water's edge, washing the dried blood from her arm. "You're a strange man," she said suddenly. "You kill the wolves but don't take their hides. You make fire but leave no smoke. You carry sorrow like a secret." Jacob looked down at the stream, at his reflection rippling beside hers. "I've done things I ain't proud of," he said finally. "But I try to make right where I can." Nita's eyes softened, just slightly. "That's why the spirits allowed you to find me." Her words carried the weight of prophecy. "They guide those who still listen." Jacob chuckled bitterly. "Spirits never guided me anywhere good. I go where the wind pushes me." But Nita shook her head, dipping her fingers into the water. "No," she said softly. "You go where the land commands." Then she whispered something in Apache, and the water shimmered faintly, as though it had caught light that wasn't there. When she looked at him again, her eyes glowed amber, and a faint smile touched her lips. "You think you saved me, Cowboy," she said, "but I was sent to find you." That night, as they sat by the fire, Jacob couldn't sleep. Every sound, the coyote's cry, the rustle of mesquite, felt different, alive. The stars were brighter than he'd ever seen. He watched Nita sitting across from him, her face calm but her eyes distant, reflecting the flames. She was whispering again, words in her old tongue, her voice weaving through the crackle of burning wood like a song from another world. When the wind shifted, he swore he heard his own name in her chant, drawn out, reverent, almost like a prayer. "What are you saying?" he asked quietly. She met his gaze, her voice low and certain. "I am binding the promise. You'll walk with me until the blood debt ends." Jacob wanted to protest, but the words caught in his throat. His chest ached, as if something unseen had tightened around his heart. The fire flared higher for a moment, then fell to a faint blue glow. "You feel it now," she said softly. "The land doesn't lie." He did. He could feel her presence like a heartbeat echoing inside his own. He didn't believe in curses or magic, but he couldn't deny that something had changed. And when she finally lay down to rest, her head turned toward him, her lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. The last thing he heard before sleep took him was her whisper through the night air, "You're mine now, Jacob Reed. And soon, you will understand why."